23. Do you have anything to add or change on the agenda? No. Okay, so we have 2 new board members. One of them is here tonight. Welcome, Emily. And are you going to let the other guy know that he needs to come and get sworn in sometime?
Yeah.
Okay. So on our agenda tonight is commercial daycares in a residential zone. So to get you caught up a little bit, I think maybe you're vaguely familiar with this. Georgia Next Generation has a home occupation. Is that right? Never
Currently, they have a
conditional use for home occupation.
conditions.
And we made it temporary because it's located on 150 Old State Road, which is kind of, we felt wasn't the safest location for daycare. They actually are not living there, so, but give them a buy on that because they needed space to move part of their daycare while they brought their other building, which is the old Interstate Auto building, up to fully usable for the number of children that they serve. They have since asked to make the 150 Old Stage Road property a permanent daycare with no home occupation, a daycare full out. Daycares are not listed in our allowed uses in commercial at all, isn't allowed in that zone of the AR3. So we need to have a discussion about whether we like to change the AR3 regs or we look at other towns, and South Burlington actually has an ordinance around daycares in residential areas.
So the DRB had it's under other uses, which is one of the commercial aspects in our development regulations. The DRB has to send that back to the planning commission to be addressed. So you can't change the development reg. You can change the development reg, but that's the whole process. All you're deciding is on this particular one, if you're going to allow it in an AR3 zone, and then that will go back to the DRB. Their meeting is the 18th, I think. Yeah. So you have to do it on a case-by-case basis until
unless you change the regs.
And we have the authority to do that.
Your development regs. Okay. The planning commission sent it over to you to make that decision. And currently it's not listed as a use. You can allow for it or you can deny it.
Did we get rid of the 2 different daycare levels?
Those are home.
They're only home ones.
They're home ones.
And they're not
going
to use the whole building as a commercial building.
They want to switch it to commercial.
Yes. We usually let the board talk first, but I guess
I
don't think that.
My opinion on that would be, it seems like a nibbling of, that if you open the can of worms, you got to open it for everybody. And then, what is a commercial daycare? Does that mean you can have 100 kids? Is there a limit on it? And if you start allowing that in residential areas, are you impacting the residential neighborhood?
Okay.
I think I can add a little bit to this because the daycare was once on a property that was served by a NTNC state certified well in my barn. I think what part of the problem is becomes a water problem. They had 24 kids. The cost of water to have a public water supply to serve these kids gets expensive. When you have 2 separate daycares and you have half the kids in each, you don't have to have this purified water for over 24 children. So it doesn't matter to me publicly, for the record, what the board allows. The other things that it gets into is things like you planning guys know that these things are daycares and all these, that are tied to all these grants that we're gonna get to later when those agenda items come up, are tied to these childcare things in that South Village community, if you ever do get that community going. So I think what happened here is it's a split because they don't want to pay the cost of what they were paying in the daycare on Route 7 to have this expensive water system that has to be tested, monitored, good for the kids to have a well that's got backup chlorination for all that stuff that happens automatically. It's part of the state's drive to have safe drinking water. It ties to some of that stuff. And it gets expensive for these daycares to have that many kids in one location because of the cost of the water system. If South Village had a water system, it could take care of that, but that's another story. Thank you.
Okay, so when they originally came in for their, hearings about splitting their daycare into 2 units, it was with the understanding that they would bring the water system up to code at the location on 104A and close down the other one within a certain number of months. That was what they told us they were planning on doing, having all their children at the hybrid road location.
My understanding from what they're bringing forward is hybrid, or Old Stage would be an infant center, so 2 and under, and Hybrid Road is going to be for older. But I believe, I'm going off memory, is they're going to be serving more than 50 kids total is what the impact was. And I can go grab your form and double check it if you want, but I believe it was higher than that is what's in the proposal.
Stage Road was only supposed to be, or not, the second location was only supposed to be temporary. Well,
No, it still is at this point.
the
My,
understanding that it couldn't meet.
well, we didn't make them do a lot of things because of the temporariness, so I think we could put a lot more requirements in if we made it permanent. But my hang up at this point is they haven't followed through with the decisions that were made the first round. And until they get to a point where we're satisfied that they've met all the requirements of their original decisions, I mean, they moved into their buildings without COs, without having done some of the things that were in the decisions. And we haven't fined them. We've tried to be nice to them. We've given them extra time. But I still would like to see them satisfy all those requirements before we move forward, allowing them to do more things that will have more requirements that they may or may not choose to do. That's part of my, and then there's the whole, do we want to start allowing commercial in our residential zones?
Right, and I think your first one is a DRB decision about meeting the requirements, where the planning is trying to.
Okay, so we're just deciding, should we allow
If you're
this-
allowing it in that
this
area.
daycare in that area? And
Yeah,
the
because your
DRB
DRB
can
meeting
mold
is
them to
18 for everything.
Okay.
Right now, there isn't anything that allows them to do that except for
Right.
this one.
What is the population of the daycare when it becomes operational? How many people are gonna be in there?
If you
What is the
want,
water supply gonna be serving?
off the top of my head, I think it was over 60 kids total between the two. I don't know exactly what the license is around. We have their license on file, but
Just 104 location.
right, we have their license on file. They are licensed up to a certain number. I just, off the top of my head, I don't.
It's 50 plus, I think, right?
I believe it's in that range.
Different cutoff ranges with different health requirements.
Right, and also different ages,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
so
that's a.
depending on their age population and so juggling.
Carol, Yeah, it just seems to me that with all the problems people are having getting daycares up and running and the deficit we have in daycares, it would seem like it would be something we should try to accommodate if they're looking to even longer term, make that another daycare center. Just my opinion. I know I work quite hard down with the legislature on some of the daycare issues that we have. Many people are just plain going out of business, the little mom and pops. And this is being replaced by people like Sarah and Todd who are working hard to build a number of daycares around the area. And just my opinion that if there's a way to open it up to daycare in that area, it would probably be a good idea.
Yeah,
Make it conditional. On a case by case basis.
yeah. Well, this is just, if we allow this, it is just for this building, this one time at this point.
Yeah, you're basically opening a window to allow this in an AR3 zone. And then the DRB would take it.
The other thing that we need to keep in mind is there are 2 other proposed daycares very close by that are not built yet, but they're proposed, so if we're thinking ahead, are we causing problems for proposed businesses that are in our village district and where you would want daycares to be? This one isn't far off, but just, you know, ideally we'd have better traffic flows in the village than going in our old city. Yeah,
To me, allowing it would be a short-sighted solution to a long-term problem. And I think you'd open more can of worms and solve. And I think if you want to do true planning, you don't do, allow it over here one time, because then it's going to be, well, you allowed it there one time. So I want mine over here, and then you don't really have zoning, you have a mix of everything, because nobody adhered to it.
So I did speak to the attorney about this, if it opens the door, but it doesn't. It's because it's not, we don't have a regulation, we can do it on a case by case basis, and it doesn't set precedent.
I know in the past, we've always said a decision that we made prior doesn't set precedent for future decisions. Yes,
For the record, I think that the board did support what Carl's thought was. You did allow them to have all 50 kids at this new location and the transition location to get there. It wasn't that the thought was is a daycare wouldn't be allowed. I think that that the board had that covered. I guess I don't have anything else to say. I just wanted to make that a point.
we did. I don't know how much you followed what went on when they first came in for their hearings, but we pulled a lot of strings and got them in much faster than normal and gave them a lot of leeway. So
I'm sure they appreciated it. I mean, they were first between a rock and a hard place on cutting down the place where they had been and then moving to.
And you were speaking now about the DRB.
that is true.
You're saying we. Okay, just wanted to.
Get our words mixed up, sorry. We as the town.
I'm
Yes.
thinking to myself, what meeting done this? Not me. Okay.
All right.
So they went ahead with it up to this point without really approval. Is what it sounds like to me.
They got a decision and they opened without meeting the requirements in the decision. They still have not met some of them because of weather and whatnot. And we decided we wouldn't find them.
Yeah.
And we sort of set up a new timeline with them when they have to meet those requirements in the decision.
So now they're looking for us to decide on
another project before, that's just my hang up is they haven't finished the first project and they're coming in for another project. And so I'd be more, I'd take this into consideration more if they had either done the first one correctly or had completed the first one, but it's kind of left hanging. And
The first one is one of the houses.
well, both, I
houses.
think both locations still have things that,
This, I believe this location, they're okay until, I mean, I think it's June first, it's the temporary, I think they're okay there until June first.
okay,
The other location they've got, I think there's two deadlines. The end is November, is the end of everything, but there's two deadlines that they have. So they have two more conditional occupancy permits that they have to get.
What about their water issue at 104? Is that resolved?
Not to my knowledge, it's not, I don't have any record I can give you.
That's a
I don't
big
know
issue.
how,
That's a big issue.
but
That
they
moved it
have,
out.
they're not
Well,
at the capacity yet. to
yeah,
have to
they
require.
have the water they need for the capacity they have, but once 150 Old Stage gets shut down and they move everybody over there, that's when they have to have the upgraded water.
Do they have the chlorination that's required?
I don't know what's.
They don't need it for the number of kids they have right now.
104
Yeah, either location,
at either location.
right? Because they kept their numbers low
Yeah.
enough.
And when will it be triggered? Do you know? what the number is?
They're right at the
Okay.
limit right now, I think, or pretty close.
So that was my
Kevin might
point
be
on the
able to-
water, Tony. Sorry that it wasn't understood, but you figured it out a different way. Once, if these two daycares had to come together, those kids in that daycare have to be served a higher standard of water. You were absolutely correct. You found a way around it where I couldn't get it out. I had provided that in the old barn on the Jackson property for Dave and Sarah LeBlanc with the Lang, who's the landowner. They have a deeded water rights from my property. In a perfect world, we'll have a public water system in the South Village that will serve the needs and purified water and backup chlorination and all of that stuff. But the daycare at the Lang house had that because they had more than 24 kids in one location. One way of, if they keep less than 24 kids in each location and they have 47 kids, they are not required by state rules to have the higher standard of water system, an MTNC, instead of just a regular well. I think that everybody, there's nobody that doesn't feel that daycare is needed. They've done a great job. I applaud them. I never had any problems with them as a neighbor serving them water. I find them to be decent people.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. And where,
Any other thoughts?
So then with this property, could it stay? It runs with the land. Rezoning this.
Yeah, if we make this decision, although in the past we have put some where it doesn't run with the sale of the property. That is a possibility to have it be a daycare only, right?
Why does it have to be called a commercial daycare? Why is that word? Is that a zoning word?
They're not living in the house,
Okay.
so it's not a.
There's the in-home daycares.
It just makes it sound more offensive in the residential district. Sorry.
I don't think we're meaning for it to sound offensive. Oh, sorry.
So the in-home has a cap, a lower cap on kids.
There are two levels of
Right,
in-home,
like you
yes.
have like 8 or 10 kids or whatever it is. Depending on what age groups. So their original plan was to move everybody to 104, right? Then you give them, they were given time by the DRB and stuff to do that, so. I guess to me, this would be on them to do it. I mean, they were given, I mean, they've been given a grace period to do it, so I mean, they've been given more, so we say flexibility than zoning allowed, basically, without.
Yeah, we,
So I mean, to
them
me,
rules
I don't
to some
see
extent.
why you wouldn't hold them to the original condition, not do it.
So
I think that's DRB's decision.
Well, I know, but I mean, by you allowing it, you would be giving them permission to do it, the DRB would then do the, well, they allowed it, now we can't, I mean, basically, the ball's in your court, because if you don't allow it, the DRBs, they can't just change zoning, can they?
That is right. The DRB has to request and make that decision.
So I mean, basically, you allowing it would set precedence for them to, bless it. And I would think that their original plan was to move there. And if they had some hang up and wanted an extension because they were, whatever, then they could have maybe give them an extension to this time or something, but to sit there and change plans and say, well, now that we've got this one half running and this one half running, we want to do the best of both worlds for us monetarily. I don't think their financial aspect of it is town planning problem.
my understanding from the information I talked with them about is, because they want to make it an infant center, the parents have liked that it's more of a home style daycare than the other facility being a more commercial facility is. Parents like the home style for the infants. That was what came forward. So. Susan, back.
Oh, sorry.
But the South Village,
That's could have sat over here.
I know, the South Village allows it, so I mean, basically, if they had a house that they wanted to buy in South Village, they could do the same entire thing, right? It's just.
Yeah.
So I mean, basically,
Yeah.
there is options for them to do that, it's just, it costs money and it's not as convenient and stuff like that, I don't know why we give away town planning. Unless you're gonna do the whole zone and say AR3 is, unless you're looking at doing AR3 and have everybody, I mean, the problem is, you want 20, 30 people going to one location at a certain time, pretty much to drop off or pick up, because then you're adding way more traffic to a different road that, I mean, Old Stage Road is not.
That was definitely one of our issues when they originally, and that's why we made it temporary, because we felt that it wasn't the best road to be dropping and picking up on.
And does the South Village or South Fire District, does that have their qualified water, or does that not? I would think it would, because it's feeding 80 houses.
They're on a well there.
Was that?
They're on a well there, a private well. At that house, at that daycare.
Yeah, I know, but he's asking if they could connect to the South Village Fire
There's
District.
not a
Would
place in
that
South Village or something.
No, South Village Fire District, through investigations with us in the state, doesn't have enough water capacity for what they already have. And that's all in the state records from engineering we've done with the well on my property. I had my hand raised, so I was waiting. There is a daycare with a conditional use on the property that the DRB of the town of Georgia has approved, a 3,000 square foot daycare. Initially, early on, they thought that they would engage me to get that as a conditional use on my land and become a tenant in my development. So there's been, they've definitely touched a lot of land for daycares in the South Village of Georgia. But again, something that's needed, and I hope there's a solution, to everybody's dilemma here. And
Any other thoughts? Do you know what the definition of infant is in the daycare world?
I think it was 2 and under is what they were specifying for that, if I remember correctly.
So we had an issue with them not having enough parking on site at that 150 Old Stage location. We actually, the calculated number of spaces they were supposed to have was 13, and they could only come up with 11, I think, or something along that line. And we reduced the number to allow them to go forward. And I'm thinking with infants, you got more hands. I would assume more employees per child or however it works out. So I'm a bit concerned about that because they don't have a lot of space to put more parking.
Concern for traffic, for commercial uses, compact residential area. Granted, there's only 2 busy times, but traffic is still an issue.
I'm assuming none of the neighbors got called to this because it's not actually hearing about that property. That
They'll be at the DRB, but not this.
would be interesting to see what they think. I actually sat over there one morning while they opened, and there's a lot of traffic. I'm not totally against allowing a commercial daycare in a zone that it's not allowed in, but I'm not sure if that is the best location. I don't know. What do you think?
It would have to be worded so it's that location, it cannot be expanded. It can't add to it in any way, fashion.
And there's piles of lumber over there right now. That's what makes me
It's what?
question what they have in mind. Piles of lumber over there right now.
There are wetlands surrounding it too.
Oh, yeah, they're in the buffer right now.
We prohibit still development in the buffer.
If the property is sold, it would not be used as a daycare.
Is that a decision we
So
can
that-
make, or is that the
So-
DRB?
That's the DRB. And I know that the plan, what's her name? Is her name Lang? I got the wrong name. LeBlanc. Want to sell it to their daughter, so we'd have to, and I don't know if she's coming in. Is she coming in, or are they coming in?
I don't know what they're gonna, I'm not sure if that's,
But, tie it to that one owner if we want to do that.
I mean, because of the lack of daycare, the need of it, there are none. I can see bending it a little bit, but there's gotta be a lot of restrictions, but if it falls through, it reverts back to the current rules.
Yes,
You would think at some point in time as a community, if you do get a public water supply system, that parents may force that to not be an option for their children. With the PFAS and all this stuff that we have in our water system, if the municipality had a water system at some point in time, parents, you would think, would bring their kids to a daycare where the water was certified and tested. I don't think this will last forever down there, just because of the situation with drinking water.
There's
That's
nothing
what I was
stopping
thinking.
somebody from upgrading their own personal well system to go above and beyond either, or business doing that, so there's no requirements limiting people from doing more. So that's something to consider too.
and I don't think people are gonna move their kids from one daycare to another because of the water system, but maybe they will. I don't know.
I worry about well water. the child's small, developing. And if the whole state's drive is, well, safe drinking water. If there was just a point to say that I think at some point in time, even daycare, even LeBlanc's, if there was a water system in a less expensive way for them to have all of their kids in one spot without having to pay this massive amount of money to have a certified water system, that you wouldn't see them trying to break in half like this. They care about kids. They have dedicated their lives to child care.
So the question really is, do we let the DRB go forward with this or not? They're the ones that are gonna put all the restrictions or limits or not.
That may or may not be met.
In our decision, I think we have some restrictions in it.
I think our decision is just whether we allow a commercial daycare in AR3.
On this particular.
On this particular, yeah.
Right, on this certain lot.
With no conditions.
They're coming to the DRB on the 18th. Right now, the DRB can't do anything because there's no avenue for this to happen. So they can impose all the conditions. You're just opening a channel for them to even allow it. If you don't, they can't even, there's no way they can structure it.
Well, can we see those conditions before we make our decision? Why not?
The DRB can't set the conditions unless we know that commercial daycare is allowed.
Show us what you're proposing.
You're
Well,
welcome to
well,
come to our
well,
meeting and
well,
make,
That's DRB and then you can.
It's a,
he had that opportunity. He turned us down.
So, reading the definition of AR3, purpose of the AR3 district is to enable higher density residential development, where existing development at a higher density has already occurred. Development in the district should enable the economic provisions of services, reasonable pedestrian and vehicular access within the district and to nearby businesses and recreation districts. Protect important resources, avoid strip development, and be planned so as not to burden the ability of the town to provide adequate facilities and services.
We always have the the DRB has the option of extending their temporary permit. Right? So, if we say no to this, it's not like we're shutting them out completely. We can extend their temporary permit. Although they're not in compliance anyway, because they're not really a home occupation. So in my opinion, I would lean more in that direction. I'm not totally opposed to having a commercial daycare in the AR3 zone, way better than AR1, but that's not a great location. I think there's a lot of problems there. That's my thought.
now this is another case where they know. Regulation. We're gonna have to see what- going that route.
They
Okay,
were
that
a little short on time,
I understand that, yep.
but their plan, at least what they told us, was to upgrade the water system at High Bridge and move all the kids there and have one location. Now, if they want to move all the kids to Highbridge and then have another location because they're expanding their daycare, that's a different situation, but I'm not sure, because they're not here, if this is, the idea is that they're going to expand their daycare, or if they're just not going to upgrade Hybrid and keep the same kids in the split.
No, I agree with you, let's see, Blake's property.
The interstate auto. Karen, you want to say something?
Well, I know that the issue with daycare is it's a very large issue. I think that there are a lot worse places that they could be. It just seems to me that keeping it a conditional use while they own that property isn't a bad thing. I'm certainly not sitting on one of these boards, but I know that the challenge for parents, working parents, to have their kids in a safe space is really important. I think that, anything the town can do, I think that's important. And I think it's hard right now trying to get things accomplished on a timeline. All it takes is one person that's doing something in the proposal not to be able to get it done, and it throws everything off. So seems like they could have a little more leeway.
They've got an excessive amount of leeway, and it was my understanding that they just didn't even read their decision or choose to make some of the changes that we had requested. They were kind of hoping that we would just overlook them. But
So I wanted to jump ahead in this, but I do have, there's more information from what they sent over for their proposal. If you want some questions answered, this is their DRB proposal, which,
so my question is, are they still planning to upgrade and move everybody over to the Highbridge and increase their numbers at whole stage?
not, I would say not clear. They are trying that the Highbridge would not be ready until May or June because they can't have more than 24 kids there.
Yeah.
I think their temporary is June, if I remember correctly. That they're proposing for this is a total of 16 children, 8 infants, 8 young toddlers, 1 year or less. When they graduate from this, they'll go to the Highbridge location. So current use is like 16 children and 5 staff, and I think they're looking to go 1 more staff, 6 staff. They're saying 6 staff, and it says 5 staff, so it's 5 or 6 staff.
Well, they have those floating staff members too,
Yeah.
so that might be where your other person comes from.
Yeah. They're saying they're gonna have 13 parking spaces.
Are there septic issues resolved?
Septic is different with babies and toddlers because they're in diapers.
Yeah, they don't need nearly as much because, so that probably would get them out of their septic
Water
problem.
usage, change the amount of calculated Which is not our decision, that's the state.
The state's, their license.
They have enough water there at this time
Capacity for all the.
for the
employees.
kids they have there and the employees, and I think they had listed 7, well, like 5 full-time and 2 part-time or something employees in their last.
Yeah, and I believe their license for 16. 16 children, 16 and 6 staff is what they're using, is what they're doing.
So if there's delicate, kind of one of these situations, optic wise. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
It is.
If we approve it, if we say no, then we're instantly the bad guys. And it's not because we're anti-daycare, don't get that, nobody get that twisted, that is not the case. If we say yes, and then there's issues down the line, and then we try to enforce decisions or put penalties against them, again, we're the bad guy for trying to.
I know, but so far we have not
Shut
fined
them
them
down.
for anything
So,
because we're trying to work with them. But, you know, putting this restriction of saying, yes, it can be a commercial daycare, but you can only have 16 kids and they all have to be under 3 years old or whatever. Who's gonna police that? You know, they could change that someday. Their population of children may shift and they'll bring some 3-year-olds over or have some kids get off the bus there or whatever. And we're not gonna stop in every few months to see what age their kids are. And they don't want that. So I'd like it to be a site that had a lot more flexibility and we didn't have to, you know, put so many restrictions on it that we can't really police well.
You have Karen waiting.
Karen, you got another question?
I guess
I was gonna say, doesn't the state have an awful lot of control over what's going on in there?
They can, they set limits based on their sewer and water capacity. I don't know about the age
They are
thing.
I think,
that-
I know all the ones in St. Albans that my staff use, the state steps in and looks and checks those centers all the time for the number of kids and the number of adults working there.
Oh, I'm sure they check on that, but if we're putting, age restrictions, I don't know. I don't know how much of that, like, I think they have 1 permit right now for both locations.
no, they have 2.
Oh, they
two
do?
permit reasons.
Oh, okay. So does their permit specify ages?
Yeah, they're completely different in what their specifications were.
Okay,
I don't remember exactly everything that was on it, but they are 2 permits.
we're also being asked to solve a problem they created.
I realize that.
Maybe nerves be that they don't even have their current requirements up to date. Seems like they're ignoring those.
Suzanne,
Yes, sorry.
just a comment following up on what I said before, having been at a lot of hearings on the daycare issues. And it is constantly coming up against regulations, making it harder and harder for people to go into the business or stay in the business. The manual on just the daycare center itself went from like a book about maybe 20 pages long to over 100 pages, which then had another book that helped explain the first 100 pages. So, daycare providers are are being forced out. The small people definitely are. The blanks are in better position from that sense. But, you know, I guess I would, anyway, obviously it's your guys' decision. I would take it that we should do the utmost thing we can do to help providers stay in business. Okay. That's my comment.
Yeah. I don't think we're trying to shut them down, because I think, and I'm totally just making this, when they originally came in, they were gonna have all their kids fit into the interstate auto building, and I think they still are going to, but this is an extension.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not kicking kids out that are already in daycare.
Mm-hmm.
But,
No, I understand. I just a comment on my part, so I know you had a tough decision.
okay. Yes, Fred?
So the extension, so how long an extension, because DRB would be the extension,
Yes.
how long an extension can they give? 6 months, a year, whatever they want? I'm not sure. But I mean, obviously they can't give forever because that's your.
No, I would think that we would work with them as far as meeting their requirements over at the other building, you know. I assume they've talked to somebody about, you know, the things that need to be done over there, and, you know, it's hard to get contractors and it's hard to get on people's schedule, and so I understand that part, that it may take longer than, I thought it was June 30th, but it may be June 1st. I know it's someday in June is when they're supposed to be out of their 150-year-old stage. And, you know, depending on the weather and availability of people and all that, that I could understand giving them an extension, because they've got somebody coming, but it's not until July or whatever, or August even, you know, so.
They have come in for the permits over there they're doing a pavilion and an awning, so they did come through and do the permits for
So
that.
they're working on some of it already, so.
I mean, to me, the logical solution would just have the DRB give another extension to extend it out a little further, give them a little leeway on their permits, because I mean, builders are behind with COVID and everything like that, and nobody can hire help and stuff,
Right,
and now it's solved everything, in my book.
and I do think if they put in that new water system, they even have a little bit more room than what their full capacity was at the other location.
I think they want to serve more at, probably over at High Bridge, and just with the infants. That's from the conversations I've had. They want to keep that more of an infant center. It's residential, it's more homey, it's what people have liked. That's why they were coming in.
So if they're going forward with their water system to have those additional kids there, that's really what you guys have to look at, how far out that you allow these people to get that in place, because that will be by far the longest process. We went through that process on Ballard Road. And I can tell you, I so agree with Carl. The governor's office, the LeBlancs had everybody joining hands to beat the band. We had jackhammers out in the ground for the backwash drain system that well needed. But it is a long process. I don't know where they're at in that permitting process over there, but that's really going to dictate how long.
But they're not looking to stop using the old Stage Road thing, it's an expansion of, so it's not that they don't wanna leave that, so an extension would just be kicking the can because they don't wanna close up that location. It was the intention that it was temporary, that's the temporary conditional use. But now they decided to go a different route and keep that open permanently full time. So an extension to a DRB decision doesn't really address that issue. Because they want to keep it open permanently. That's what I'm gathering from. So.
This is a tough one.
Can the select board override anything that's in this?
This decision?
No, on any of the, and then, with any of the zoning regs. I mean, that's what this is the zoning regs.
You know what the DRB does to environmental work. How about plan?
Well, they're not even an interested party in this decision. So how could they appeal it? Right?
They're the top tier of the town, I mean, that's,
Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah,
I think there's a reason why they can't have select board and planning commission be on the same, well, a select board person can't be on planning commission, I think just because of the separation of powers. And I don't think I think being overstepping to one to say that they could usurp the other. The only thing that could happen is if the DRB didn't do what the select board deemed favorable, they could remove them from office one before. Then they could resubmit an application. That would be kind of.
yeah, but the thing is, they've applied with the DRB, but the DRB is the one that requested us to make this decision.
I think I'd like to see what a
That's how the regs, it's in the regs that has to.
4471.
To me, it looks like they're trying for a spot zoning, which is not a good plan.
A person can appeal for or petition to become an interested party if they have a substantial interest in the decision.
So this is what you're calling it, as use is not listed in the event that a proposed use is not identified in table 2.2. For defining these regulations, the DRB may allow it as a conditional use in accordance with 3.2. If the DRB finds that the proposed use is in the same general character and has a similar impact on neighboring properties as one or more uses allowed, the DRB should determine the minimum size, setbacks, lot frontage, and parking requirements based on similar uses allowed in the zoning district. Prior to the public hearing, the DRB shall send notice to the PC, which may submit its written or oral recommendations regarding the proposed use.
Says May, so we don't.
Oh, so we can put suggestions down then, right? Says PC may send recommendations.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you just read, sorry.
Actually, that's it, which may submit its written or oral recommendations regarding the proposed use.
We don't have to
So-
decide.
So we can send a list of recommendations along with our decision if we decide yes.
that would be a conditional use.
That's the way I hear you saying that. Is that how you
That's-
read
I'm
it?
just reading, that's how I'm reading it.
Written or oral
Prior to the
recommendation?
public hearing, the DRB shall send notice to the PC, which is what they did, which may submit its written or oral recommendations regarding the proposed use. They may have a little more leeway there.
Doesn't say. We decide this. What is this?
Yeah, that's very gray.
And Dave's interpretation was that you needed to.
We need to make a decision.
Yes.
But it sounds like we can send some, we'd like these stipulations kind of thing.
Yeah,
At least
I would
send,
say that from what it says, yeah.
So it sounds like they want a decision from us tonight or something?
yes,
Well, you have to do, they're coming.
before the 18th, so,
And how long have they known this?
what's that?
How long have they known this? And now all of a sudden, we have
Well, we,
minutes to decide.
we, got the paperwork probably a month or so ago, had to go to the DRB for the DRB to say, we'd like planning to send us a decision. So we had to wait till the next DRB meeting for that, and they did that at their last meeting, so now here we are.
The process
Yes,
can't meet the deadline.
it is a process,
And then the process goes back to you at the DRB.
Right.
yes, well, me, not Tony.
You're the chair.
Yes,
So
so, we've got a few options, but we do need a decision tonight at some point in time. We could move on and talk about something else for a while we ruminate on that. We could vote. If we vote to allow it, we can send oral or written, list of recommendations to go along with that. So there's your option to weigh in on things that you would like to see or not see. What do you think?
Are we doing that in deliberations
We could do that in deliberation.
at some point? We've kicked this around. We've listened to the public,
Okay,
and I'm not going to shut them down. They still have more to say.
anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, we'll go on to development regulations. Do you have a list, things that were,
No, I don't have a list for you tonight, basically with the other items that are on here. To establish a priority list of what you want to set priorities on and finalize. Because we've talked about all these, but to move forward, we need to start to prioritize and set. So we know that we do have an ongoing list for development regulations, but we know that that's what a 6-8 month process to get it approved. So do we want to set a deadline to have a draft so that we have something to work towards, that kind of thing?
okay, I think we need to figure out which are our priority items, and whether they're more important than the town plan. On my list, I have the junk ordinance, which is coming up at the next select board meeting. No, it came off the table. They are going to talk about it at the next meeting. I don't know what that means, but at least it's off the table. Temporary structures, short-term rentals, the definition of development. The big road document, we're working on the little road document right now, but there's a much larger one that condenses all the many road documents that we have into one document that's been started. That's standalone because that's policy, so it doesn't have to do with zoning regs. How to encourage more affordable housing, forest blocks and connectors, which has to do with Act 171. Regulating apartment sizes, senior housing, sidewalks, talking about the escrow money that we have, food trucks, whether to allow PUDs in L1 and L2, And should it be optional in some of the other districts? Designated downtown and historic village. My favorite topic. Farm stands. Sidewalks again. A checklist for inspection for certificate of occupancy.
Definitions, I know, there's a lot of definitions that we're missing.
Yeah, a whole lot of definitions somehow got cut out. 60% or more in 2 zones. We've run into some problems with that. Yurts and tiny houses. I think with the affordable housing crisis, that should rise towards the top. The legal trail ordinance or policy, I think it's being worked on by the select board. Public sewer and water. Temporary certificate of occupancy, we have created one. We already have that. That one's
It's called
done.
something different.
Okay. And upgrading impact fees. So that is our list.
And footprint lots.
Yeah. It's not really tonight, but
It is on this list.
footprint lots.
It
Okay,
actually isn't. Yeah, you just have to define it.
so clearly the town plan rewrite has to rise to the top because that has a,
So I have a question.
yes.
Is that your whole list?
No, there's other lists too.
There are other lists, but it's what I put together recently.
Because I've brought this before multiple times in 4411. Basically, my complaint is that 4411 says, where is it
Is
right
that
here?
L1 or L2 lot size?
The L1 lot size, having different setbacks for lot size, I take it illegal, and I think an illegal zoning regulation should trump most of the stuff on that list. Because right here in 4411, it says, all provisions shall be uniform for each class of use or structure within each district, except for additional classifications may be made for any district, or within any district for any or all the following. And then it talks about big roads, bodies of water, public buildings and grounds, but nowhere does it say for a different lot size. And the terms, all provisions, to me, your setbacks, so everything shall be uniform for each class of use. So a house is a class of use, right? Shall be uniform within each district. So basically, if you have a different setback for a different lot size, I take that as a not uniform for the use.
Are you talking about pre-existing lots or?
What was that?
The way it's written, it's not tough. Yeah, it's talking about the way the existing lots currently.
If you have a 5-acre lot in L1, you have to be farther back from your setbacks than if you have a 1 acre. Now, if you have a 1 acre lot, you can divide a 5-acre lot into 5 1-acre lots and make the setbacks. But if you want to keep it a 5-acre lot, you're supposed to be 25 feet farther back from the road, which makes absolutely no sense. And here's a copy if you want to copy both sides and pass it around. 4411, right there. You can read right there, all zoning laws, blah, 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 blah. It's basically giving the basis of zoning laws. And I think all provisions would say everything, and it says for each class of use. It doesn't say for each class of use and lot size. It doesn't say anything. And it gives you the option for different setbacks for, obviously, for a lake or a stream. It says right there in your exemptions. But it does not say for a lot size. So I think that should trump a lot of your things.
Since he got the floor first, I think what should trump some stuff is
You've had the floor many times, just saying.
Orchard County or feasibility study that was paid for and done in 2003.
I was probably bored of that.
Georgia Village Plan Vision for Our Future that was done in 2003.
I think I was on board for that too.
Georgia South Village Floor Plan that was done in 2009. A Georgetown Economic Feasibility Study for a Master Plan in 2006. A scoping report
I was on board
from 2013. A Georgia South Village Bicycle and Feasibility Study from 2012 where we don't have a sidewalk still.
Walking, I was on. Should have been bicycle and walking.
A Georgia Comprehensive Town Plan that doesn't have the plan implementation action items finished yet. A Transportation Master Plan that most of us got together and sat in the library and wrote. That doesn't have.
Is that what?
This stuff means a lot to me because it's hindering my movement in that housing development in the village. And I think a lot of that ties toward too many plans have been shelved. They're not completed, and that ties into all these things on this agenda: a town plan, a South Village municipal water sewer plan, a village designation. That's what makes this happen. These plans have been written over and over and over again. As you go down that list, do you have some it's hard for me with documents. I've been applying for grants. I've applied today and I'd like to leave this with the planning commission. And I can't get any of these grants for these items because of what we don't have done in the town. I can't get an A&R drinking water construction fund loan because we don't have an affordable housing element in my development over there because it wasn't demanded because we don't, I believe, do we have a policy for affordable housing? That's written in our town plan?
It's on our list of things to.
Well, all these grants can't even be applied for without it. The A&R drinking water loan planning. I can't qualify for basically anything. That private developers would be able to apply for, and if I could apply, I'm lower on the list because the grant program awards get priority consideration for state designation. So really, I would like a time where maybe I could present to you all of these things that other people are involved in and working with the governor's office. Housing is the crisis, really is what the crisis is now. I agree with Carl, daycare was a bigger crisis. When it doesn't matter if you have a house or not, if you don't have a place to put your kid and go to work. These footprint lots that are on this list are to do with me trying to get a price to have an affordable workplace housing for a husband and wife that go to work.
What's affordable in your opinion?
Affordable in my
Numbers,
opinion,
like,
yeah,
if
should
I
be.
wanted, if not me, say somebody wanted to purchase or rent something from you, what would your definition of affordable?
I can't hit it right now because of the infrastructure cost, Emily. I have sidewalks to put in, town roads to put in. There wasn't a grant fund for a sidewalk, or maybe I'm wrong, Susan.
You afford that, but you don't know what affordable means. Don't have numbers to go with that, so I'm just.
No, I
Looking for
can't
more
spit the
information
numbers
on
off the top of my head. You want me to dig for what the standards are? Could you tell me what our affordable housing policy is?
I'm asking.
I don't have an answer, but now I have a question back. What is Georgia's affordable housing policy?
We don't have
We
one.
don't have one.
That is
So
on
that
our
puts us-
list.
That puts us out of compliance with Northwest Regional Planning.
That's why you have to rewrite your town plan every so many years to catch up on the new things that have been put in place that you didn't have in your plan before. One of them is the Act 171, wildlife corridors and blocks or whatever they call it.
Do we have a yearly report that we sent to Northwest Regional Planning with where we're at with sidewalks, so I don't have to come here and ask with where we're at with other grants or loans, that I'm not tripping over everybody going to the same resources that we should be going together as partners. In all of these plans in the action study, if you read it, it says that the partners for number one on this list that hasn't been done in an implementation program for the sidewalk for Ballard Road, which was the most important thing in all of these traffic studies, a piece of sidewalk, that was supposed to be shared for in partners with the town of Georgia and the property owner. I've already given the 10-foot easement for the sidewalk, but nobody's got a plan for the sidewalk other than looking at shouldering the developer with it, which rises the cost of that infrastructure there. That's all that, it's simple economics. It's not what anybody did wrong. It's what we need to do right together to achieve those goals.
I hear you.
These grants that I applied for today, I can't apply for them without you guys having a housing plan in place. That I can't pass the muster of the grant if there's an affordable housing element to it. And yes, Emily, the affordable housing element that I was bringing to the property was Cathedral Square, who meets all of those nonprofit housing requirements. Cindy from Cathedral Square was coming to build the senior housing if we had state designation, because she needs to go get all these grants and have affordable housing to it.
So let's talk about the state designation for a minute.
Sure.
We don't qualify for the historic village, and the benefits of the historic village in the South Village area would be limited to very few buildings.
I can agree with that.
Okay. The new downtown designation, or whatever, I think that's what it's called, something on that line,
Town Center.
needs to have either public sewer or water, and the other one in the works. We are looking into those, but we're a ways off.
Do you not remember when you went and proposed to the select board that we had an offer for a public water
I did.
system for them?
I do.
I don't know why we're having a discussion a year later with no movement.
Because sometimes the select board makes decisions different than what planning wishes they would make. There was an offer at one point in time to put sidewalk down a long stretch of Ballard Road. It was in the plans. We were excited about it, and the select board got word of it and said, you need to remove that sidewalk. We don't want sidewalk there because then we'd have to maintain it.
So with or without downtown, we've had this.
I know, let me
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
finish, I got a little bit more. I know that the state right now is talking about changing the requirements for the new designated downtown, or whatever the new title is gonna be. And I heard, and I don't know, maybe Carl knows more about this, I don't know if he keeps track of what's going on at the state. But, they're saying that within a year, they will have a new list of requirements that will make it easier for some of these small towns. Because right now, the only people that can afford to have the staff and put these new designated downtowns in place are pretty large. South Burlington's done it, Colchester did it, right? I mean, they're big, they're much bigger than Georgia. And so, they're talking about putting a new list of, requirements together to make it easier for these small towns that their historic village is not where they want their growth center to be, and they want a new village designation. And so I was told that in a year we'll have new requirements. So perhaps it will be easier for us at that time. But, either way, whether we work on the water, public water and sewer, or we wait for those new regulations and or both, we're talking about some time here.
Yes, for the benefit of the others in the room, they tell me that they wrote all this stuff. It just happens to be that we, as a community, didn't get it done. We didn't meet our implementation plans. We left them on the shelf, and that's why, as I was wading through this stuff in the last couple months, that I really felt that, your board could use 9 people and they could divide and conquer. That's a whole nother thing. That was just, when I look at your conservation board, you have 9 members. This this planning commission has so much work in front of it that you should bless this room to be filled with 9 people that you would manage and manage well, Susan. I worked
But
with you for years.
whatever we decide to do still has to have the blessing of the select board, and
Yeah, but the select
unfortunately,
board adopted every one of these plans. How isn't it the blessing of the select board?
they did, but not because they wanted sidewalks or because they wanted,
So we had,
every time I had sidewalks lined up, they said, no, we don't want sidewalks, and we have to maintain them. That was the
so we
pushback I
went
got.
out and had a grant for free sidewalks from what we were told to do in the study from V-Trans Bicycle and Pedestrian Program. And we turned it down because the town didn't want to maintain
It
it.
was a developer that was gonna put it in for free. It wasn't a grant.
I don't know
It was a
when that was.
developer.
What I know is that in 2019, all of us went to a public library and met and said, let's do this. And the number one thing on an action plan was a sidewalk on Ballard Road.
I hear you.
How do I, Emily, get affordable housing there when I have a $300,000 sidewalk to buy that was supposed to be done with myself in the town? That was my
Not
only
on the
point.
select board, so I can't answer that for you.
So I think the things that I would like to see is we have a yearly plan that comes from the planning commission about what budgets and goals and what you need for money to try to do some of this stuff. Where are we at with that planning? That is part of a municipal plan every year. Did we get somewhere at the end of last year where you have a list of what we're doing on, what grants were applied for, what money you needed to try to do an investigative study toward water or wastewater or anything else?
At this time, no grants have been applied for, is that correct? And, there's not a lot of money in the budget for us to do these projects.
What I was told with a lot of these grants that I've been applying for that I can't get because of issues that we don't have resolved here in the planning level is that this money that was all given away is gonna all be, a lot of it is remaining ARPA money. And if you didn't get it, that well dries up. All that free money that everybody grabbed and built their sidewalks all over the state. So I wanna leave you guys with this. This was just one other thing as we looked at wastewater in your list. There were 10 towns that were selected in 2003 by our governor. All of them, including Westford's a great one to look at. What they did, they went along with their wastewater study. They are now getting ready to install their in-ground wastewater because they can't, it wasn't feasible like it wasn't in some of our studies. To not
I see.
have a wastewater treatment plant. Georgia was one of those towns and everybody else marched forward. West Windsor, Westford, Castleton, all the other poster childs went through it and made it, and they've done something with it. And we're 20 years later, and we didn't get on board. And Westford has been given $4.5 million in grants to create less wastewater than what I have on that land in the South Village, okay? I don't understand how we're here today with the strong planning that was done. I'm at a loss to try to figure out why everybody else went forward and we kind of just stayed stuck in the mud. And I don't think that needs to be passed by again. I think that too many generations of these men that devoted their time to write these plans needs to mean something. I think what else means something to planning commissions is that you have had to figure out now that the key to grant in building this infrastructure is through some type of state designation program. There are nearly, you and Grand Isle are the only ones in northwestern Vermont that don't have it, and they're on an island out there, and they probably don't want it. I don't know what more to say about it. I mean, there's a drive that I think that the town has to get on to divide and conquer, and I think you've got very good people here. And I think you could stack it up and do things that are unique that are happening in the planning setting. They have created commissions just for wastewater and planning commissions. It's a subcommittee just to get through this stuff, and they've got great manuals to follow to do it. I just think that we've fallen so far behind that this is the time that the people that have put all the money into these plans see some results from it. We've got these plans that are 4 and 5 and 6 years old that are untouched with some of their action items. And I think that we have to sit together as a team, me being an interested party, if you want to call it that. I asked you to listen to all this. Better for everybody else, not have to listen to a sermon, Suzanne.
I hear you. I understand. I think at some periods of time, we have had select boards that were happy that our town stayed small and rural and didn't want to see the changes. I am hoping that we have people now that I think there's a lot of new interest in town of not just board members, but other interested parties. Look, we have people at our planning meeting. We never have people at our planning meeting. So I think the interest is out there. So I think that perhaps this is the year that something happens.
And I think a lot of it could happen on the select board level. When you look at what the state is doing for planning, like just for this one little wastewater element, they are telling you to form a diverse, committed wastewater committee. Have the committee formally created and endorsed by the select board. Maybe the select board needs to stand up and drive down to these other subcommittees how they structure this. It looks like that's what's happening
I'm not
state
sure if
planning.
Carl ever saw it, but last year I used to bring lists to the select board all the time. These are issues I'd like the select board to bring up. Sidewalks in town, public water and sewer. I had a list of like 6 items, and every time I brought it, it got put in the file. And they never, they never got there because they were putting out other fires all the time.
A town that needs a water system, that has a guy that has to phase his property and build a water system that costs too much for each individual townhome that I want to sell. The bank will never approve it when they owe the HOA for the water system $400 a month. The water system that I have to build has a capacity of 1.8 times of the South Village Fire District. It's not made for 15 townhomes. It's made for my 100 homes and another 150 homes beyond me. It's an expensive buy to buy in just to start to develop an inch of that property. The sidewalks you got all over it, the roads that I've been blessed with, the town roads and everything else is monumental with development where you don't have a water system to hook onto or a wastewater system to hook onto. I have to be all of the above. There will be nothing affordable, Emily, is what I was getting at. We're trying to sell a townhome there. The cost will be so high.
That word means different things to different people. And I know living here, and this is not my opinion, but I've literally heard words come out of people's mouths here saying they want it to be a bedroom community. They just want houses. I grew up without sidewalks in Georgia. Why do we need sidewalks? So there are elements of people in town that may not want that, even in the South Village. And again, that's not my opinion on the matter, but there are elements in town that still want Georgia to stay.
So are those the elements that you feel that have held back 20 straight years of paid for planning by every professional in this state? Is that why we don't move forward? Because some people don't want change? Go ahead, sorry, I talked to you.
That's exactly. The 2006 septic feasibility study, I think the outcome that was kind of decided was that with the fact that the area was already quasi built out with houses, that the houses that were already there wouldn't want to pay go and buy in on a septic system. And the cost of it was so prohibitively expensive, and there was no easy funding out there in the state. At the time, I don't think they were funding much of anything. And the soils are good enough to do a lot of stuff. I think it was kind of like, we'll never see a septic system. And people were also, at the time, one of the members was also concerned about the lake because there's umpteen trillion cans, now mostly houses right along the lake shore, that most of those have that fixes, quote unquote, which means, you know, you've got a septic system right off your house, 20 feet from the lake, because that's better than the 55-gallon drum that was there. So it was kind of a pull and tug of which area to focus, and I don't know if that
No,
one
it's,
is both of them.
I have it here.
No, the one that he's got,
This is the South Village.
South Village and
So the
slightly
recommendation in 2009 was recommendations of the sewer feasibility assessment for the South Village completed by Stone Environmental. Try to pursue a contract with Carl when he was with PBM Nutritionals.
Right, there was, they
For
had,
use of their sewer system. Using good that was one. Using good septic soils in the southeast area of the village for one or more large community septic systems. Really what should have happened, the town had been charged to go buy land. They should have gone and bought that land that I bought. Because it's got the water system on it and it's got the wastewater system on it. But I bought it. And I was forced through, how many times did I come to you, Suzanne, and say, I have the chip plant and the water plant for the wastewater, and I'm the municipality here. I haven't found what studies said that would be found in that quadrant of the South Village. A combination of both. Look at PNB. I don't know PNB, when I last looked at their permit, they were only using 1/3 of their capacity.
TBM does not have a sewer system, septic system. It's an industrial waste.
That's right. I
They
understand.
do not
that.
pass, they have their independent leach fields, just like homeowners
Yes,
have.
for their bathrooms, for
Yeah,
their process waste, for their facility in manufacturing.
That goes down to the plant.
They have a wastewater plant.
And you can't combine the two.
I don't know that.
Yeah,
The study said to look into it.
yeah, you have to rebuild the
You
whole
may have crossed that off the list, and then there's only one option.
Yeah.
It's wastewater fields like I have, and like the development at the campground will come forward with. It's noted in these plans that the Fairbanks land doesn't have suitable septic on it to use.
they did point out, I think 4 different places near the South Village that had suitable soils. One of those has since been developed, so we're down to 3.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, the current permit that Fairgo has now, okay, doesn't allow for human sanitary waste to be included. But there, you know, obviously a feasibility study would have to be done if you could interest. Big problem is to interest any of these corporations in getting involved. So, but I don't think it's prohibitive to mix those two, but you would have to get it. I just gonna have 2 questions. Okay. One would be, so what did the select board say when there was a proposal to, I guess, purchase the water utility that you're talking about? Okay, your system, I guess, down there.
It was just it was more of this might be an opportunity coming forward because.
One thing off the list as far as the designation, if you will.
Right,
village Designation, as far as I understand.
You checked the box, Carl.
What's that?
You checked the box. That's what I was looking for somebody to do.
So then the second thing is, you know, I noticed the other thing on here is the town plan. And, you know, are we gonna, my understanding is we can't really move much forward in some things until we complete that town plan. Is that correct?
Well, that's got a timeline on it, so we have to do that by a certain date and have it all signed off by everybody, have our public hearings and have the select board sign off on it. So in and amongst all these other things that we want to work on,
Yeah.
we have to work on the town plan.
Okay, and many municipalities go to these regional, planning commissions
I can,
to get some help on that.
We,
Okay,
we
so-
don't have the money to do that because our grant never got submitted,
previous.
So how much, money would that cost?
$30,000,
30,000 that would be paid to,
Northwest for their
Okay.
time.
So has that been brought to the, well, obviously we've had so much turnover when you say has it been brought to the
I believe the current,
select board?
I believe the board knows that we did not get our grant.
Okay.
I'm not sure that they're aware of the monetary cost for not getting the grant. And I think that we're going to try to find ways to do the, plan upgrade with less use of Northwest so that it won't cost us $30,000. Yes,
So when I was on planning commission, the feasibility for the septic was basically kind of put as a wash, like it's out of feasibility. The feasibility study determined it's not feasible. So that was why it wasn't activated on, because it was like putting septic in the ground and everything for all these houses that already have it, which have good soils and stuff, was not gonna gain us. And so what was determined, I think, was maybe we should look at water, and people talked about bringing up water from Champlain Water District, or maybe
down
wells
from
on
St.
your
Albans,
property.
I think you talked about bringing it down from St. Albans or up from Milton.
Because that would limit or would remove your isolation distances from septic, because now you don't have to be X amount of feet because your water line, not a
Right.
drinking source. And so that was the way that we were going. But when I left the board, I don't know what happened after that, but anyways, and the South Village was basically like, well, we need to have the density there to get some sort of justification for it, because if you don't have the density to pay for it, so it's like the cart before the horse, but the horse before the cart, and then it's like, you almost need somebody big enough to come in there and pay for it all, or, like Walmart or something. I mean, Walmart benefited St. Albans by coming in and putting up a lot of stuff, or Verizon Tower benefited, getting power and telephone up full back. Nobody would have built up there. So basically,
It's hard to justify without something there. At least now we have some plans in the South
and then,
Village.
and
back
then from
we
a
didn't.
sidewalk standpoint, we always wanted sidewalks down Route 2 and Ballard Road. The problem was, is the select board being very budgetarily conscious. Every time we did we'll put in a sidewalk there, we're like, well, we don't be liable for it, we don't want to plow it, so who's gonna put it in? So no, we don't want to put it in. It's like, well, let's get a right of way in it, so then somebody can put it in, then we do the, escrow of the money, because basically, which I don't know if you still are doing that, but.
Yeah, but, I mean, so we escrowed money 10 years ago. What is it worth now?
Right.
Peanuts, You might as well say.
And so,
we
it's, it boils down to, the sidewalks went nowhere because our board wasn't behind spending the money unless you had connectivity the whole way. You weren't gonna get that connectivity the whole way unless you basically engineered the whole thing yourself and got a whole plan for it, which I don't know if you've been working on that plan for sidewalks.
We do have a plan for sidewalks.
You got the whole master design of everything, or you just have?
In South Village and Air.
But that was what, we were leaning towards, was a master plan, so that wasn't a piecemeal. But at the time we were doing, everybody did their little piecemeal, and a couple, I think like the bank has it, and I think there was one other, does the health center have it?
Over,
There's
the tractor place used to be.
a 10-foot spot in front of Grace Church.
Right, that would.
Well, they're the ones that wanted to build a whole bunch of sidewalk and they were told no.
There's,
But over, the tractor place on 104A. Wimbledon, yeah.
So, I mean, that's why we don't have sidewalks. It wasn't because the planning commission didn't want it, it was because the planning commission can't spend money. The planning commission is tied, their purse strings are tied by the select board. I mean, you can't even apply for a grant because the select board has to apply for the grant, accept the grant, and then you can use the grant, monitor the grant. So all the onus for why money wasn't spent is because the select board didn't want to spend it, but it was also, a lot of it was infeasible.
who cares about yesterday? You guys did a great job. Everybody did a great job trying to get to where we're at today. It's about tomorrow. What changed is state designation. If you don't have state designation and you're a planning commission, you've left yourself behind. I don't care what anybody says. Westford, Wolcott, Bakersfield, the smallest of towns have designation because it brings them money. That's what happened in Montpelier. That's what built St. Albans. There's all kinds of stuff that gets tied to you get put on a list or you don't, whether you have designation or not. And those designations should be tied to water and wastewater. What does the state want to give a municipality money for if they're not doing their own part? I mean, it's a full circle is really what it is. And what I see about it today with me trying to get funding and grants for my project is the town doesn't have what it needs. So a couple things. I still, because you made the point that you're trying to find other sources other than Northwest Regional Planning to write a town plan, that I think that the development has happened fast enough in the South Village that we're all ahead of you. My plan is my plan. I have my water and my wastewater. I'm not here crying for water and wastewater anymore. I own it all. I offered it to the town. Carl, you asked what happened. A select board member maybe didn't understand how important water and wastewater was to this designation that was being offered to them. I would rather sell a townhome that has a water pipe to it that somebody pays a water bill to a municipality. The select board chair, I think at the time, said he's a businessman. He should go sell his own water. The problem is the cost of instilling that system is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for just a small portion for my phase one of 15 townhomes. It was smart for me to join hands and partner, like every one of these planning manuals says, that you partner with the municipality. There's people that have to come together to make this happen. And you understood what I was trying to do for you, but the select board didn't. And that's what happened that night. And it offended me.
Okay,
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
we need to move on.
Yes, go ahead.
We have a few
You
things
asked-
that we have to get
I
through
really
tonight.
just wanted to make a point as you go down that list. You can't forget about, this was a 20-year plan. 20 years is gone, it's not finished. That is the most important thing for this town, I feel, is finishing what you started. It's been sitting on the shelf somewhat with some of these items, and thank you for listening.
Okay,
In this, I met with Otter Creek Engineering the other day regarding the municipal water supply. They're going to come back to me with a proposal of cost to start looking at what the engineering costs would be and what we need to do to move forward. He gave, basically it was a kind of a free consultation. He looked at everything that was there. So I'm waiting for that to come back. He asked some questions. We got some answers back that I'm sending over to him. And there's some questions, but from what he's telling us, a 3-year municipal water supply is going to be a 3-year process, or the municipal water supply is going to be about a 3-year process for us to get that through the state. There's a lot of stuff that the town has to go through to get there. Not only through the permitting process, but you have to get it approved by the voters. You have to have so many people sign up for it. And he's like, it won't happen for 3 years. That's a lot faster than he said you'll never get a wastewater system in. Most of these places are doing a in soil or is that what you
Really look at Westford, folks. Really just look at Westford.
I've been following them.
So the second thing was, Greta Brunswick, I had a conversation with her about the village designation. She came back to me and said that we cannot get a village designation until we fix up the town plan. Because the way our town plan is written, it will not allow us to get a village designation anywhere. Or it does not have the necessary.
The last guy that looked at it said that we could.
So I can
the
read
guy
what
from
you
the
said.
state.
He was preparing to reach out to Richard Amore. I realize that your town plan may not include the necessary language for village center designation. Statute requires, and she gives me the blurb. I checked and was right. The Georgia plan includes an implementation step to consider applying for a village designation, but does not include an explanation of how it would further the plan goals. So before applying to the village center designation, the plan needs to be updated first. This is the context that is needed to understand why the town was denied. It is more that the town is not eligible under the plan until it is updated to include the designation for granting. Since the town plan update is on the horizon, I think it makes sense to focus all your efforts on the plan and then try to go back out for village designation. I just got that.
We know that a town plan has to have an affordable housing element to it. I learned that the hard way by applying for a grant. When the state looked at my grant, like you have in the piece of paper there, I need an affordable housing element. I can't even comply because this town is 5 years behind. It has been, Emily, do you know how long this requirement has been in the municipality? I don't know. I don't work.
Less than 7 years, because our plan is 7 years old.
Okay, so I think it's been like 5 years where Governor Scott's Commission on Housing has mandated that every municipality now. A year ago, you approved my development on Howard Road with zero. I was shocked that I had been granted by a municipality a housing development that has no requirement that I give anybody any affordable housing, not even 2%, not even one apartment, not even none. That was my
That's
approval.
not a fix.
So I'm kind of like stuck. I'm damned if I'm you guys. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. I don't really need much from the town. If the town had their plan done and an affordable housing component in it that is required in today's plans, then I might have been able to get a little bit of a grant here that I've been passed on.
But we're not the only town that waits the 7 years that's
Right.
required, so
no,
some towns
it's
do,
more.
they follow the rewrite cycle.
Yes,
So-
but your plan is a working process. You don't leave it for 8 years and come back.
That is very normal, because in the interim, we're rewriting our zoning regulations.
That
So
is not how it's supposed to work.
it's how most towns do it. South Hero's rewriting theirs right now.
So,
Jericho's rewriting theirs right now. They have not been working for the last 7 years to upgrade it. They started in the last year.
your plan is supposed to have a list of goals and changes that you made every year. You're supposed to have that for regional planning in this municipal plan. It's statute.
Up until last year, our planning board wrote all the policies, ordinances, town plan, zoning regs, and held hearings. We just switched to DRB.
We see municipalities separate planning commission and DRB, so planning commission can work on the
Right,
file.
and we just did that. And in the meantime, we started in 2018 rewriting our zoning regulations. COVID got in the way. It took an extremely long time to do that. Because for a while, nobody was meeting because we thought it was gonna go away, and then we had to switch to Zoom meetings, and everybody had to learn how to do that. So it took us an extraordinarily long time to do our zoning regulations. But I think it's more the norm that towns rewrite their town plans in a year or two, not over a period of 7 years.
They kicked it from 5 to 7 for the reason
Right,
of being so laborious to get it through.
Right,
In 2017. You were supposed to file an annual report. Every planning commission must make an annual report to the municipality as noted in 24 VSA, section 4326. This report should summarize the commission's activities for the past year,
those are in there.
including current issues, trends, and needs for future action. These reports are often circulated to residents through the town, village, and city annual report. The planning commission should produce a complete and informative statement regarding this. I don't know if we've been doing that.
In each of our annual town reports, there's a report from the planning commission.
And are we in compliance with Northwest Regional Planning right now? Do we know? I mean,
Yes.
So,
Well, I mean, we have our zoning regulations got updated and we're now working on our town plan. So unless the town plan lapses, then that would put us out of compliance.
So in this manual, the municipal plan, which is, the most up-to-date one that's out there. Studies show that the most effective plans are those with a clear vision, measurable objectives, and strategies or actions designed to meet the plan objectives. By including these three elements, we can make sure the plan just doesn't sit on a shelf. I mean, it's a whole section about what usually can happen in these municipalities. And when we look at this many plans and where we're at, we kind of fell into the bucket that they're warning us about. All I really care about is tomorrow. I don't care about yesterday. I don't think that it's meaningful to us. I think that.
Well, I guess I'm still trying to get my head around what is the highest priority to get done to move.
To me, I see that this South Village thing and all this work that generations now have done to forward that.
Are you referring to the new town center or what designation?
No, the report, the transportation master plan that says have a road network over there that now is all changed because when a slaughterhouse develops and puts a garage in an area, there's not supposed to be a garage. It alters where you're going to do other things in that district. There's been a lot of things that have changed since these plans. 50% of land, he's right, was, hey, it's not going to change. It's there. It's going to stay there like that. I worry about what we didn't do for planning that dictated where these future roads go. We can't do it as we go. That happened to me. It didn't work good. Now we have a road to nowhere. It doesn't work in the essence of planning is all I'm getting at.
Okay.
That was one of the roads on one of those,
Some of the roads in your plan are in that
so
master plan.
master plan was used for that.
So,
But we don't wanna focus on the past, remember, we wanna now and the future,
so
so.
my biggest thing was, that is a hub of where municipalities find a tax base without plowing down 15 miles of road to find it. These condensed areas that were designed for planning over this 20-year thing were because you could get the same tax base and spend a percentage of the upkeep to plow the snow in the neighborhood. When you have 10 houses, one every mile apart, it costs your town a lot more than the same tax base that you get for this condensed area. Your school system allows for housing, your community needs housing. That whole plan and what was set up that didn't get done is the most important thing to your municipality, I feel. It's going to help you not need our money that saved you this year. It's going to help you save other things. It's going to bring tax dollars to that area. I mean, what you get out of it is you become like Colchester now. You're going to put another 1% sales tax on it, pay for some more stuff, sell some more stuff. I don't know. But
You're talking around in circles and saying they're not getting the work done, but you've been talking for like 45 minutes, tying up 45 minutes of time that they could be doing something.
okay, so go ahead with what your thought is. My thought is the South Village got left alone. And I feel that that's one of the important priorities that she had, and they asked a question.
So I don't know if Carl got his answer to what your number one priority is.
What supports what wasn't done in 20 years for that South Village of all these plans that you guys paid for? Do you have any other plans for around town that you put all this heart and time into that haven't been finished? That's my point. That's all.
Okay.
I think that the South Village is very important to the town's future.
You hold a big key to that.
I will go on with or without the town. You guys know that. Go ahead, sorry.
We thought the South Village was the area to build and consolidate to back in like 2000 whatever. One, because the soils were there. Two, because it was already there. Three, because it was close to the interstate, so you weren't going to have a lot of people traveling through back roads. The problem was obviously septic, water, and through the years, I mean, back when I was on planning commission, we were doing development review, which tied up most of our time. So planning was sort of like, oh, we have to get the plan done, because if we don't get the plan done this year, we can't change any of the zoning regulations. So basically, you just got on the cycle of, okay, you change the plan, and then you start changing the zoning regulations that came up that either people were using as loopholes, or that you said you want to change something differently because you wanted something different in that area, you could see the logic of it. So it was like on the 8 years I was on planning, I think it was, 8 years I was on planning, it was basically, you went from doing the town plan to doing the regs to maybe doing a few in between. But I mean,
It was mostly putting out fires.
it was mostly putting out fire. And the one thing about the DRB splitting and doing the development review, I'm not totally sold on it, but it gives the opportunity to the town planning commission to actually focus on planning and solely on planning. And so hopefully more planning can get done, because the town hasn't really been planned well in the 150 years it's been. And most of the roads you talk about, obviously density of roads is, adds to your tax base, yes, but we still have 60 some odd roads in town regardless if there's one house on it. And there's Newton Road that has, I think, 3 or 4 houses on it. The town still has to go up and back down it and maintain it, just because the town was built back, in 8 or 17, whatever, and that's how they laid out the roads. But if you go to like Arizona or something where you build mile blocks and stuff, you can actually build and do great planning and zoning, because you do a mile little block and you put all your stuff in it, you have these little dead end roads in the middle. But we are left with, here's our 150 years of whatever, now we've got to fit whatever, and our town center, I mean, it used to be down here, or right where we are. And then just because of the interstate and the soils, it moved down there. Well, Westford doesn't have that problem. All these other communities don't have the problem, their town center moving. And the greatness that they have is, without their town center moving, they can say, well, we've got this town center here, we want to build it, and most of them don't have good soils, so then they can go and say, hey, we can't do much without soils. Well, we've already had stuff moved down to the interstate because of the interstate, because of commuter traffic and stuff. And so it's much harder to get grants for working septics. I mean, basically, the state wants to fix water quality, but you're not gonna fix water quality by putting in a septic where everything's working. You're gonna fix it putting in septic where stuff isn't working. So like, I think I wouldn't be surprised if like Oxford is more clay. So I mean, it's harder to put in a septic, stuff like that. So, there's probably more septics failing in that area or something, or they sit there and go, well, all these different communities. The South Village has the benefit of having hugely percolating soils. I mean, what scares me with that is, if you dump water, where does it go? It just disappeared. If it went right straight to the lakes, it went so fast, kind of thing. But that's the dynamics of it.
So the zoning was put in place for this great, dense South Village. And now us developers have permitted projects, okay? And we're ready to develop there, with the cost of infrastructure that we got burdened with. And I can change that water system. All I need is 2 little pokes in the ground with 2 little small wells, and I got my 15 units, first 15 townhomes. And I can give up on the town municipal community water system that this community needs very bad. I don't need it. Okay, so it's found there. It's the fact that the zoning got put in place before the designation, and now it doesn't matter anymore, really. There's not a lot of planning to do for South Village. You look at what's coming at you, you have another development that'll show up someday soon on a campground. That's bingo. You got 200 units of housing. You know how big the project is on the fun park? 100 units of housing. That's a lot of housing on a little piece of land like that. It's approved. Maybe it's not the right thing, you think, for Georgia now, because everything didn't evolve into it, but it's allowed there now, and there's going to be a big giant 3-story building to look at when you drive by. It's just what it is. The zoning allowed for it.
Well, that's why we have zoning. It's also for stuff in different zones, and that's the logical place to have it is down by where you have your big feeder roads and stuff, not have it way off in 6 miles from the interstate.
What makes housing is the cost of housing today. What makes unaffordable housing is having it burdened with infrastructure that you have to.
Okay,
And that's me as a developer. Right?
it's a great conversation, but unfortunately, we're not moving forward very fast.
As we thought, the point of the agenda was to prioritize
Right.
what you guys want to do moving forward.
I think
Have any
we've
goals?
had a good discussion. I think we'll learn things. That's great. I think we're all on the same page that we need to find a way to move the South Village forward. I'm not sure everybody in town is excited about the South Village moving forward, but we do need housing. But let's get back to the list. I think top of the list is gonna have to be the town plan.
That's what it sounds like.
And it sounds like the designated historic village can't happen until after that, so that one falls down.
I'm sorry, Suzanne, I was talking and I apologize. Okay,
The designated historic village, we're trying to designate this area around this building, historic village, which would give us better grant, get grant priority anywhere in town if you have a designated village. And so that would help us get grants. But from what Doug got from Greta, we can't do that until our town plan is updated. And
but how could we accelerate or get the town plan done?
we have not even started with page 1, so we're months
Okay, but
away.
then, you said that you couldn't get help now.
Well, I recently stumbled on a list of other grants, so perhaps I will be coming to the select board to see if we can get some grant funding. I haven't researched to see if any of those are appropriate. Okay, I just got a
I'm
list.
new to this whole thing. Okay, as you know. As I said, I've been peripherally involved, but I've become more interested in us moving forward. Okay, all right.
But one
There was
more
a
quick-
state grant that was due December 1st that
That never
Tried to
got
get-
finished.
funding for, but the select board didn't approve the town spending portion of it. So the select board at that time did not make any action on that, so we were not able to apply for that grant.
Okay. That was this last December or?
Yes.
It's 2022.
Just for clarification, because I've asked it for like a couple meetings now. Regional planning. What is our planning commission's situation with them? Do we look to them for help?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so are they gonna help with the writing of the town plan?
I expect that they will. But we need to do it in a way that doesn't spend $30,000 that we don't have, so.
Because that was like one of the reasons why I sit at these meetings, because it was.
I think if we had some time to talk about that and not the village.
It's not the village.
I know, I'm saying, I would like to talk about the town plan tonight.
And the town plan started 2 weeks ago with me at a planning commission meeting, where I had a conversation. Regional planning wasn't a help. You were at the meeting, Doug was at the meeting, but was here, Greg was online. That I asked, is there some disconnect between regional planning? Because that's what we should be seeking out to help us write this. And I appreciate you saying that they're gonna participate.
We ask them questions all the time, don't you call them? You have a connection up there? I mean, I've sent emails to them before to ask questions. I'm sure you use them, but to have them come and sit with us and work on the town plan is gonna cost us money. So we wanna try and find a way for them to provide us information without spending as much time as they have in the past.
They charge a fee, like if we wanted them to come here and talk about this.
They would charge us.
They would charge us. There's not any, you think you'd get like some little maintenance agreement from them being your mothership, that you would get 10 free hours like computer consulting, but go ahead. Thank you.
I think the town plan is 15,000 was what they gave us for a number.
Oh, 15 and then
And then
15 for a
15
study
did-
that we were gonna do.
Do the other study.
Okay. So either way, it's. a
So we're
chunk of
really
money.
looking at a $2,000 a year spend, is what I said at that meeting. Because the town plan lasts for 8 years, at 15,
Okay,
8
yeah,
times
more or
2 is
less.
16.
Yep.
You're really, if you go to the select board, I think you're asked, it's easier for regional planning assistance for 15,000. If it's explained for this town plan that we're talking about, it's a 2,000.
Well, we also use them for the zoning regulations, so you could probably double that easily.
Susanna,
Yes,
thank you for letting me ask some questions. I appreciate that, but I'm gonna have to leave myself.
Okay.
Just a second. Like,
Well,
I know you were there too.
thanks for coming, because I'm glad you're showing interest and, paying attention to what we're
I
doing.
appreciate all that you do, okay, and, doing the planning for us, okay, I think we just need to focus a little bit more, okay, and, I guess that was my only comment, and I'm gonna leave to get the rest of your agenda time, so we don't get too far off of the mark.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'll see you at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, but wait a second, when? Is there one a day? No. Oh, good, okay. Take care, thanks.
So on the town plan, do you wanna, kind of time frame do you wanna set on that? Do you wanna try to have it done in the 2 years that you have? Do you wanna try to get it done faster than that?
Our deadline is like January
January
of
2020.
25.
Cycle for towns.
And so I think that we should aim for, if we say, I'd like to say in a year, have it mostly fleshed out. Does that sound feasible? And then, there's a potential that we'll have some board members change but then start having the public hearings so that, because there'll probably be tweaks and whatnot in the next, 6 months. And I don't want to, January is a weird time because the select board is crazy busy, like December, January. So I'd like to have their public hearing hopefully in November so that we don't have to push it into budget season so much.
Right, so we would have to, and that from talking to North Regional, that was kind of their idea, was to try to flush most of it out this year, because they think if we put it off too far.
So we'll be running into a really tough time for the select board.
Right. So we might wanna have that, put a budget together to get to them to see what they would wanna do, because it's in their hands, right, to do that.
Put a budget together for the select board, say, okay, so work with regional and say, how much would it cost to, okay,
Maybe they can split it over 2 years. That would be 7,500 this year, 500 next year. But talk to them and see what they,
okay,
try to make the ask easier, but
yep,
if we don't, or unless we're not gonna have it to work with, basically.
right.
We'll have to start scheduling.
Well, I think at the very least, they would give us a list of the things that are missing that have, happened in the last 7 years, right? I have talked to people in South Hero because they're rewriting theirs. They're more than happy to let us come and sit on their meetings or sit with us and talk about the process that they've used, because they've had a lot of public input and how they got their public input. Jericho is also rewriting theirs, and theirs is all online. What they've done all surveys, and they do a survey on a certain topic, and they have it out for a certain amount of time, and then they gather that data, and then they put out another survey on a different topic, and they've done a series of surveys and then taken all that information to use in their town plan.
And August, we'll be able to do that.
I'm just saying, that's all available for us to look at, at this point.
But our new website will be able
Would
to
have
have
that.
all of that stuff.
Yeah, we had Fred and Heather were here wanting to serve on the board, and I thought, you know, if we wanted to do some kind of public forums where we got a large group of people together and broke them into small groups and gave them a topic to hash over and come up with a list of ideas, it would be great to have more people like them to, you know, help bring that about.
With everything that needs to be done, that's very smart. That plays into another thing that I think your board should do, and I respect Tony and Tony's position last night. I don't need to push it. Still do think you should increase your board.
Again, we can't do it until next March, so.
I disagree with the rules.
So I think that's a place to start, find out from Northwest if they split the cost, what they think a minimum amount of time, at least to give us the list of topics that we need to include. They need to give us the data that they normally supply, you know, they give us all those charts at the beginning, and then do a read through when we're somewhere near finished to give us oh, you're missing this chunk, or this really fits over here kind of.
So I will reach out to them and start.
Question.
Okay.
Are you rewriting or readopting?
We have to update it at the very least, but
So it's gonna be a rewrite?
yes. Because of the things that have happened in the last 7,
I
like you're saying, the affordable housing plan, and I know the Act 171 is a newer thing. There's probably other things too.
The Regional Planning Commission must bless your report at the end.
Right, yes, they do.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying that has to be included in the cost, is having them read through it and tell us what we're missing or whatever. So I'm thinking that we take one meeting a month and do other stuff, and one meeting a month and do the plan. I don't know what everybody else.
So you want to add a second meeting?
Well, it's been reserved there,
No, I don't, yeah.
at least for a little while until we get going and see how it goes.
I'll probably want to see the planning.
And there may be times when we're waiting for information, so we won't have that second meeting, whether it's information for one of these other topics or information for the town plan. So there may be months when we only have one.
Along with that, would it benefit us if we started at 6 instead of 7? I think the 7 came about when we were combined board, and a lot of the engineers and things could not make it, or maybe some on the board, because of family issues, couldn't make it until 7.
Heck, I used to work.
Why not start at 6? Does it make?
Are you videoing this or just taping it?
No, it's doing what we're testing a new AI software, so it's video and it's transcribing.
I don't like to eat on camera, but that's why I was wondering if I could eat supper at these 60+ meetings.
No, it's
No, I
video
want
and
to
it's
have
going on
something
YouTube.
It doesn't make any difference to me, but it's just, seems like it makes sense to start early.
Well, I don't know about Derek's schedule, and I don't know about yours.
Yeah.
And it may be, let's wait until Derek
No, it
comes,
doesn't make any
and
difference.
we can talk about it, and maybe 6:30 or something.
Just
You have to
throw it
update
out there.
that. You have to
Oh,
update
yeah,
your
we have
schedule.
to make sure everybody knows, give them a couple weeks notice and all that, but we can talk about it at our next meeting,
All right.
put that on the
I
agenda.
think the select board started that just recently.
They started.
They did 4:30 for a while, so.
No,
And I think when you start to look at your municipal plan, a lot of this other stuff that everybody has for thoughts is all part of that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's gonna come together anyway. You're gonna talk about the South Village and the plan that you're working on. It kind of
Yep.
gets touched upon at the same time.
Yeah, so village designation is gonna get, that's down on the list, because that's gonna get tied in.
Yes,
Development regs, you want that, is that 2, number 2, or?
Yeah, we'll leave it at number 2 there. I think we're gonna pick away at little pieces of that for a little while.
So well, if we work backwards, when do you want an update on it by?
If we're gonna, are we doing, 2 different ways to do
There's
it?
only one, from what I've asked the question, you have to do the whole thing. Any changes to it, you have to go through the whole process. Emily, do you know something?
Can we
different
do
about
an
that?
amendment or something if it's
No,
something? Huh? Oh, we can do interim.
I've been
I
told we can't.
recall highly
I
not
know.
recommended.
Well, it has to be for a very specific, it can't be just random things that we want to
Right.
change. So, if it was to somehow increase housing, okay, just let me finish my thought. Increase housing because that's such a big push. If we did something to our regs to increase housing, that might be a good reason to do interim. And that's much easier to do. But if we're trying to do a whole lot of little changes, then that's a
I
total.
I asked how to do it, and I was told it's not.
Good one, so.
So when you say the whole process, you mean you have 2 hearings here and then 2 with select board, but your hearings could be right at the same meeting. I guess.
No, they have to have.
You have to have them spaced out a certain amount.
Well, no, I know that, I know.
Oh, it can be a hearing that we're.
So basically, you could have a hearing right before your meeting or at the end of your
Yes,
meeting or
so it
sometime in
could
the
be
middle of
that.
your. But I mean, if you were just doing minor things and you weren't expecting a lot of public and stuff, then it's something that's, you could easily just do minor amendments and do the whole thing. It just means a bunch of paper is gonna get, because I mean, you're
Yeah,
gonna reprint the whole
just
thing.
the process of the hearings that.
I don't think with everything that you have to do, you're gonna be in the minor amendment of this plan, you're gonna.
Not the, he's talking about zoning regs.
Right.
So
Yes, the plan is a major overhaul, but
it's.
there's little,
How do you go about your regs for affordable housing? I mean, don't you have a requirement outside of the town plan as a municipality today to have a requirement for affordable housing in your regs?
no, it
It's
has to be in
written
our town plan first. We can't put things in our regulations that aren't in the town plan, so it's a timing thing. So really, if we work on getting the town plan pretty much finalized by March, then maybe our reg changes should happen after that.
We have asked.
Because it will open up the window for a lot more things that we'll be able to put in the regs that can't be put in there because they're not talked about in the town plan yet.
Okay.
You would have thought.
Do you wanna make decisions on interims to kind of keep it moving so that we're not?
Yeah, I think we can decide on some of these, but not bring that whole process forward
Yep.
until, yeah,
We can get all the language into a draft and then
Yep.
bring it forward.
Yeah.
So, okay. So maybe like one meeting a month, we'll take on like
one of these
one of
topics,
those topics.
right?
Okay.
Now, you had a question about affordable housing. We have asked developers who had, larger developers, say if they had a half dozen houses, we would ask, okay, they wanted affordable housing.
Which is nice, but you really can't when your town plan doesn't allow you. You try doing this. I think,
It's just an ask, it's not in our regs, that we were told we shouldn't put it in our regs.
on Klein Road, and I said,
Yeah, and
So far, every developer, except
nobody's
for
ever turned
one,
it down.
well, one didn't, but we gave them a different, scenario, which was to possibly put a, accessory dwelling unit. Build their 4-bedroom house and put an accessory dwelling unit on the same lot. And they said, oh, that's a possibility.
you guys were groovy before your time. You have had affordable housing in 104A. Champlain Housing Trust has a 4-unit building. You came to this town real early.
That used to be
Never came back.
commercial. That was kind of weird that it went from commercial to.
There's, coming in right now, there's several multi-unit houses.
That's right. We had a bunch of rentals come in at our last hearing,
Yeah,
which we
but
never
there's-
have rental units.
There's several more of those coming, so
So,
over the market.
oh, sorry.
So from the zoning reg standpoint, what is affordable housing? I thought affordable housing was like you have to designate a certain amount of it, and maintain it perpetually affordable housing. So why can't a developer just on their own say, we're putting this many affordable housing, and I don't understand why.
The developer can do that,
Right.
and they get some kind of kickbacks for it, I don't know, some funding for it.
You get funding for that.
But my question is you're saying, or he's saying that you can't get anything because you don't have affordable housing provision.
Well, a lot of grants have very specific, like one of his grants he applied for, I'm not really sure what the grant is, but it says, because you're creating a new public water system, but not addressing an identified public health risk, you don't qualify. So this grant is something to do with a public water system, but it's only given if you're fixing a problem, like you were saying, fixing a sewer problem. So even though he's got a great water system, they're not gonna help him fund it because there isn't an identified problem. So
So like this
It's the
grant right
same-
here. Private developers, you can apply for it, but to get it, you have to have the municipality having an affordable housing element to it. When the state goes to look at giving me money in this municipality, and I wasn't deemed to have affordable housing as an element, nor is there a policy in this town that I have it. I don't believe, or I'm being told I don't comply for the grant. I don't comply with the eligibility requirements for it.
So from the standpoint of legal, when affordable housing is a zoning regulation, the town's enforcing it. So with having it a private, if you designated it a private affordable housing, somebody would have to, you could rescind it. Whereas if the town owned that right, you couldn't rescind it, I think is the take on it.
I don't know, and I asked Emily still, with Doug gone, what is your read on the definition of affordable housing, Emily?
I was asking you that question.
in here,
Stop, I told you I couldn't answer it, I asked
Then why are
you.
you asking me again?
Because I wanted to.
Stop.
Do you not have the answer? Sorry,
I have an answer.
go ahead.
It's not gonna be the number that you're looking for, but it says units earning 80 to 120% of median income with no subsidy.
And what is our median income for Georgia from the tables that regional planning provides?
Pretty high. It's pretty high. I know our median income is pretty high.
And this is again why the footprint lot thing, because I think that those numbers can be met for first time land buyers. I think that there's things that can happen, even with the plans in your town and the way I have to operate them, can work to provide affordable workforce housing for the first time home buyer. I don't think that I was looking to build these townhomes to have affordable housing.
So according to this, if we got a designated downtown or village center, we would have to have 25% affordable housing, which is the 80 to 120% of median income, and 25% for very low income, which is 50% of median income. And then the remainder can be whatever.
So 60 of my 100 units go to Cathedral Square and they are 100% affordable. Now they cover to build townhomes for young couples in the front of the development. That's their norm there. Anyway, we're gonna get there together. I'm approved. I'm ready to go forward with the water system and keep moving. You're not holding me up. I don't wanna make you feel that.
Are we gonna get to footprint lots tonight or?
No.
I'm thinking that we need to not get to footprint lots. I'd love to get to
Well, I
footprint.
mean, we can bring that, footprint loss won't require a development change, we talked, it's more of
Right,
a,
it's-
well, you can put it in the regs, but it's more of a, doesn't change the zoning, it changes the ownership. So,
It's whether we want to say that we allow them or not. In the past, we've always said we did not. So it's talking about what they mean and why we want to allow them. And then The other one we were gonna talk about today. There's so many things over here.
Conflict of interest policy.
Oh, well, that we can take with us.
Yeah, that's more informational.
The PRB has a conflict of interest policy and the planning commission doesn't, so.
I found this, well, I found it in the system, you might know more, Emily, this was back from, whoops, that's. Well, that's the other one, so. Right. So that was in the system, and I only found a draft, and I don't find where it was ever approved.
Well, they signed some, so. It's under that year.
So we can just take this, read it over. We wanna change anything, change it, adopt it, send it to the select board. Kiss it for us. Or whatever we call it, and then sign them. That makes sense. And the correspondence from Vermont Public
Yeah.
Utilities.
That I had, and I think they pulled it at the select board meeting last night. Can't find it, it's fine. Basically, that's it's regarding the PAYA solar panels, and they were looking to do a lift on, well, there's a stay on the project for some reason imposed by the state of Vermont, and they're trying to get a lift on the stay.
Oh,
So it's more informational, I think, than.
so they're not looking for anything like a letter.
No, it went to the select board last night. Cheryl brought it to the select board last night, so.
Is this the Mill River project?
No, this is Payas
Oh, okay.
over here.
The one.
The Mill River project, I still don't know why they have that again.
It does, I've got 4 copies of the minutes here.
Oh, so no, so it'll say,
That's why I couldn't find them together.
okay, so here's the 28th, that one looks a little different, one, right?
Right, this is the time.
I was leaving them all like, yeah, they all have the same corrections.
The problem. Do you have, which one do you have?
Well, there was 4 copies of it.
Yeah, you have that one, and then you need this one. Yep. But I don't know if you can approve these tonight without,
We've got to be able to, remember when the select board, oh, maybe you weren't there, but when the select board started, they were approving minutes for past meetings, but there was only one person that had actually been at the meetings. And
Right.
so they went through this whole thing, they're reading it over, it makes sense. They're,
that's right.
so they
Cause
still,
you'd have to have a 3-0 vote. So
right, it's like one of
do
these,
you wanna look them over that?
Tony and I were the only ones at the
You wanna
meeting.
look?
Greg wasn't at the meeting,
Right, one of them, yeah.
so.
Nick's not here anymore.
Right, so we've got to be able to approve it. We're not saying there aren't mistakes, we're just saying what's accurate to best we can.
This really helped me, because I had to subdivide these lots and things from that thing at the request of the town. When I did that, I picked myself back into the land. In a development corridor like this, it really got a big thing, and you know.
Are you not the chair?
Yeah. Why?
Number one planning member as Brown, both meeting order?
Yeah, probably should say chair.
Which one was that?
There's no secret,
The tenth,
there's benefits, a lot more benefits for the town.
and then, oh, okay. I just wondered if Jared's name was on there somewhere, and it is.
Yeah.
I saw the J Waite, and it's like, a lot of J Waits in town here. Make sure we know which one.
Yeah, it's listed under.
Yeah.
Cause he wasn't here.
Want to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the March 28th, I'll do them individually. Maybe, are there any comments?
Let's get a second first.
No.
Second,
And I would just change, saying the chair opened the meeting instead of planning member.
Yeah, I caught that. Yeah.
That's on both of them.
Yeah, it's because I pulled it from the other one when we did that.
So all in favor?
Aye. Can I make a motion to approve the April 10th minutes?
with corrections,
Yeah, with that one correction, there are other,
With corrections.
okay? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
You seconded that?
Yes.
Did you
Yes,
say you were working on a conflict of interest policy?
the only one Doug could find was, not an adopted policy, but we have one for the DRB, but yes.
Just because I have this, and it was because of a suggestion for this meeting with my sticky notes that you see all over everything, you might as well have it. That was westwards, you can look at it
Okay,
for reading, that you have to look at my notebook.
I just didn't know if you had, like I said,
I
I
like that part of, that was,
I'm fairly sure that we signed one, but I don't have my copy, and I have my copy of the DRB one, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I can't find a final version of it.
Yeah, I
or an
know.
approved version, so that's why I.
We might as well look it over and update it
why do
anyway.
you think that was a cute one? That's how I was doing my outside thinking about professionals from other areas being
Yeah.
able to help on this board. I don't think this stuff up, I read it. Single.
All right, so next time let's see, are we meeting, this is the 25th of April?
And you're gonna add, you wanna add.
I don't know if we wanted, or probably start in May.
Yeah, I think you're gonna want, we're gonna need time to get,
Okay, that's fine with me, because I don't even know what my calendar looks like. I sometimes fill those days in with other things, thinking they weren't gonna be meetings, so let's start in May, having 2 meetings. And do we wanna have our first meeting be the town plan meeting, and the second meeting be the other stuff, or vice versa? What do you think? You'll have time by then to talk to Northwest and.
that's why I was saying we'll do it today, because give me time. And you can't get them on the phone, like you have to call away for them to
And
call
they
you back.
never,
So,
they're slow to reply to emails, so. I didn't realize they aren't having meetings up there, like the TAC meetings are still all on Zoom.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's
I had to
surprising.
go get e-posters and I had to like schedule a time to go there and pick
Yeah.
them up. So,
That really surprised me, I was expecting to go to their conference room and they're like, oh, tune into this, and I was like, what? Haven't moved out of company yet. So yeah, at the very least, we could look at, what South Hero and Jericho are doing as far as questions we're asking the community if we have nothing else to do that night
and I downloaded a few other town plans from
that are done
that
recently.
are, yeah, that are kind of our size, that some are seem pretty.
Like on, I know on Northwest Regional, you can see when everybody updated their town plans, so you can find the one. It seems like there's a lot of towns doing them this year, next year kind of thing. So a lot of people are in the same schedule as we are, but there's some that have been redone. So first meeting town plan, second meeting the other stuff. Is that gonna be all right? Footprint lots we're not in a big hurry for, right?
No, because I think you can do them without changing anything, from what
I know, but doesn't planning have to tell DRB that they can approve footprint lots? I'm
Well,
guessing.
No, because you're not changing your regs, you're basically allowing for the footprint lot only for ownership purposes, and you're not changing you're using the same setbacks and everything else for the building, but you're not involved in the ownership side. And that seems to be how everybody's handling it now. You can't dictate ownership.
Right.
So it's just for zoning purposes, you're not recognizing it.
But up until now, we've always told developers we don't do footprint lots.
Yeah.
So I would think that planning has to tell DRB that we now are going to allow footprint lots.
So
I don't know if you want to weigh in on that question. It's another one of those kind of murky.
So it can be done by having the subdivider record a notice of conditions in the land records that states that footprint lots are not lots for zoning purposes, and instead are the larger lot containing them is treated as a single lot. There can be smaller common areas that surround the buildings that reside inside the larger common area that allows the owners of that particular set of units to be able to modify or change within the smaller common area without the need for an HOA change in the larger common area.
There are some footprint lots that essentially act as building envelopes, so that's something to keep in mind too. The structures being built within those footprint lots. And the back deck stairs can't necessarily go outside that.
Yeah, that's what he's saying, that it's not gonna be, we would allow them to do something that's beyond the building so many feet or whatever, so that they could.
Kind of a lot, and then another thing to think of is, and this was actually brought up today, footprint lots. There's no pins set for where they are, so it's hard, someone builds it in the wrong spot.
Right.
Pins aren't set for that, because it's not a parcel.
The footprint lot compose the footprint of
Of the
the
building.
building,
Of that,
Bigger.
excluding steps, decks maybe or something.
It can be just the airspace in the building.
Yeah.
But it also could be a little bit beyond the edge of the building so that they could build a set of steps or a patio or something. And
So I was in conversations with South Burlington zoning and Williston zoning, and one of their big issues is the common wall piece in their zoning regulations. So they're all moving, from what I gathered, to this kind of language where they're allowing it, but it's just for ownership purposes, they're not changing the regulations because they've had too many issues.
I think only what's driving a lot of it is, well, sorry, I didn't know you had his hand up on it.
So I'm confused, you're having a footprint lot that's gonna be in zoning regulations without a minimum lot size?
all it allows is for them to sell in a multi-unit building. They could sell each unit as they're built. So they,
You're like talking like a condo.
Yeah.
right, exactly, that's exactly what we mean. So they all own the property together under the HOA, but the bank gives them a loan on that footprint of their part of the building.
So basically, it'd only be in South Village, basically,
Most likely, that's what we're
or
gonna talk about.
commercial duplex maybe.
Yeah,
It stemmed from the housing, when the housing bubble burst, the banks took a bath on these multi-unit buildings because certain people owned the land or the HOAs on land, and it depended on how many people owned the building. And so now they're only writing loans, especially like the HFA, the first time home buyer stuff, are only writing loans if that person who owns, say, a townhouse owns the land underneath the townhouse. So it's really more just allowing it for the ownership portion and not for zoning. So it's being driven by the bank. They won't loan on it. That's your most important.
okay. Anything else we need to do tonight? I thought it was gonna be a short meeting.
Deliberation.
Oh, yes, we need to deliberate still.
All right.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
It is nice to actually have people paying attention to what we're doing.
This door or the other door?
That one's
Doesn't
fine.
matter.
Okay. Night.
You'll
I
do-
know, thank you, Tim.
I move we go into executive session. 9:37.
I second
All in favor? so weird having three people. First grade. All right,